Latinos, and Vanessa, you could probably tell us more than anybody, it's wrong to just lump Latinos as Latinos. Because depending on where you are from, Latin America is huge. It's Central America, it's South America, parts of the Caribbean. Depending on where you're from and what your history of your area is politically will depend a lot on where you lean. Most people would think that because of what Trump was doing with the Hondurans and the Nicaraguans and calling Mexicans rapists and, preventing Hondurans and Guatemalans and Nicaraguans from applying for asylum and the family separations of the Central Americans, that all the Latinos would have voted for Joe Biden. But in fact, Joe Biden lost two huge states, Florida and Texas, because the Latino vote broke for Trump.
It's wild.
And the presumption was that the Latino vote would have broken for Biden. Broke meaning they voted for Trump over Biden. Now, in Arizona, Latinos have a different experience because they have Sheriff Joe there, Arpaio, who became infamous for severe immigration enforcements. But in Miami, for example, Miami's made up of Cubans and Venezuelans, a lot, the Latinos there. And they come from a history and a government of communism and socialism. And as soon as they hear communists and socialists, they ran from that. They don't want to vote for that here in America. It's very interesting that, if there was an error by the Democrats, that they presumed that Latinos would automatically vote for them, and they didn't. And Vanessa, you're obviously Latina. You're in the community. I'm sure you have a lot to say on this.
I've seen a lot of different things, and I've heard a lot of different things from a lot of Latinos. And something that came up a lot was, policy over personality is what a lot of some of the Latinos that have voted Trump, which boggles my mind, right? Because there's a lot of first generation Latinos, and then there's immigrant Latinos like myself that feel very strongly about immigration and policy. And it's just like blows my mind how even for first generation, it's like, your parents were immigrants and now we're supporting, no matter if you're first generation and now you're making a decent living, right? Because that's another thing too. There's plenty of Latinos that have done very well things for themselves and want to protect their money, I guess. Like that, a lot of the different excuses that they're using, but I just don't find any justifiable reason to vote for Trump. That's my personal opinion, but like we see throughout the map, it depends on location, upbringing, community.
Donald Trump,
and it's been really intense to be Latina at this time, to be honest.
Donald Trump and the Republicans spent an enormous amount of money on Spanish radio and Spanish television in Southern Florida and Texas, painting Joe Biden as a socialist, saying he's a socialist. Wow. He's going to take your money, and people are a lot of people there are first generation or immigrated, escaped communism in Cuba, escaped socialism in Venezuela. They don't want to go back to that, especially now when they're being successful in America. And they're painting Biden as being a socialist. And I think personally, the reason why the Democrats, I'll give you my opinion, the reason why the Democrats do not right now have a majority in the Senate, they may if they win both Senate races in Georgia, and the reason why this race was as close as it really shouldn't have been, was for one reason. It was because Trump was successful in painting Joe Biden, who is in essence a moderate. He's a centrist. They were successful in painting Joe Biden as being very progressive, very left, socialist. Biden's going to defund police. Defund police scares a lot of people, even in minority communities, because they say, how do you have no police? It'll be anarchy. And I think the Democrats, and certainly in middle-class communities, I think the Democrats missed an opportunity there just because they were promoting the wrong words, in my opinion. Okay? I don't think there's many people who feel there should be no police. I mean, there are people out there who absolutely say no police.
No, that's crazy.
That's crazy. But when you hear the word defund police. Defund police to people means no police. Zero police. And the Democrats and certainly the progressives, they used very bad language that was used against them to scare people, to paint Joe Biden as being very progressive, very left, socialist, communist, when he's really a centrist. Mm-hmm. He's really a centrist. And maybe instead of, and I've been saying this for 6-9 months now, maybe instead of saying defund police, maybe it should have been, let's figure out, how to reform police. Let's figure out how to police without stereotyping, without profiling. Let's try to make people feel secure next to a policeman. It's about training. It's about changing the way that police even look. I mean, police walking around with body armor, huge hats, and machine guns scares the hell out of everybody. And it's their training. They have to train better. They have to get into the community more. They have to be able to have the community trust them. It can be done. It absolutely can be done. It takes an enormous effort, enormous funding. Police are trained less than barbers in New York. That's crazy.
Right.
Okay, we've said that a million times. Police get 600 hours of training, barbers get 1,000. Why can't we train police to be effective police officers and at the same time train them to recognize their biases? Train them to recognize that people feel that they're not being treated fairly, and train them in a new way. I don't know what the new way is, but there are experts out there who can do it.
That can
make those significant changes. And by the way, in any organization, whether it's a law firm, it's a Bradshaw Live, it's anything, okay? The store, where you may work. If an organization from the top down decides we are going to change and makes an effort to do it by concentrating for the next 90 days, for the next 180 days, for the next year, every day we're going to meet and we're going to discuss and we're going to implement and we're going to put in operations that are going to change very slowly, because nothing happens overnight, very slowly how we do things. Whatever it is, police, provide legal services, do a show, whatever it is. Supermarket, doesn't matter. That's what effective management is. And if you put your mind and your money and get experts to figure out how to do it, it's really reform police. And I don't think anyone can be mad about reform police.
Absolutely not.
But when you say defund police, that is why the election was as close as it was. Absolutely, because that's what they did. That's what the Republicans did.
And Brad, I do like that you said, people shouldn't really just, when you hear Latinos, just throw all of them in one group, because my friends, I have a lot of friends that are either Dominican, Puerto Rican, and actually one of my Puerto Rican friends, he had posted a picture saying it was the Florida poll, and it was showing the Cuban count was 23% for Biden and 71% for Trump, and Puerto Rican count was 66% for Biden and 23% for Trump. So when you say that, it's not like the whole Latino community. Yeah. I like that you had said that, because you have to understand that there are different countries and within that Latino community.
And by the way, it's different cultures. I mean, Vanessa will be the first one to tell you. Okay, it's different.
Even there's a lot more conservative Catholics as well. There's people. It's all so different. So even me being from the Caribbean, the things that I'm concerned about. Cuba's in the Caribbean too, and I didn't want to name any names, but yes, there's a lot of Cubans out there that have been voting Trump, and we can't just toss Latino is huge. We were saying, South America, Central America, the Caribbean. It's just so many different opinions because it's so many different cultures, and then here migrated into the U.S. We're in different places, still experiencing different cultures, different lifestyles, and different upbringings for ourselves as Latinos, different concerns. Latinos closer to the borders have different experiences than someone like myself in New Jersey, East. It makes a huge difference. And when we're just tossed into a huge pool, it gets really sticky.
It gets dirty and messy.
You're right. And I think that was also probably the defund police and painting Biden as socialist. And
that was it.
And what you and Vanessa have just talked about, where you lump every Latino as the same and you assume that they're going to vote Democrat because Trump is saying Mexicans are rapists, and but a Cuban doesn't look at himself or herself as a Mexican. Cuban says, I never heard Trump say Cubans are rapists. That's not me. All right. So, to lump everybody together, it was a huge mistake.
And it makes sense because most of them are in Florida.
That's right.
So
that's right. Had the Latino vote, and you would have thought the Latino vote, because they're right there on the border with Mexico.
I would have thought it too.
Right.
But
the Latino vote in Texas cost Biden Texas. The Democrats could win Texas if they had the Latino vote. And they took it for granted.
Yeah.
They took it for granted. Thanks for watching. For more Bradshaw Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.